Hey guys, here's Heiko in my garage. A while ago there was a question on one of those many forums. I don't remember where I heard it, but the question was if one of the Indian-made fuel filler caps work on a BMW Airhead from the early 70s. These are kind of the British design. They advertise them for like Nortons and Triumphs and I don't know, whatever bikes, but including BMW Airheads. And so I ended up buying one. It was like $7.95. Only took like 4 weeks to get. Finally have it in my hand. I have to admit I've already tried and took it off right away. That gives you kind of a hint, but I want to show you what it looks like. So here's the original BMW style non-locking filler cap. Mine is old, has some, damage to its chrome coating, so there's some nicks and whatnot and some bubbles and whatnot, but these caps can be rebuilt. Here, let me take it off, show you the original, and then we're going to talk about the aftermarket thing here. So BMW uses a solid steel pin that's knurled on one end. So let's hope I'm not going to drop anything here. Steel pin with a slight knurling on one end. You want to remember which direction this came out, and then you're just putting it back in. The knurls kind of bite into the material and help it stick. These caps can be rebuilt. So here you can see this is a brand new gasket. In the middle is a rivet nail, as it is called in some areas. Rivet pin, rivet nail with a washer. This is actually the original because the new gasket doesn't come with one, but pretty much you can grab this with like maybe vice grip and pull the rivet pin out and then replace the gasket and then hammer it back in. And the sides of this rivet nail has some sharp grooves to it that kind of bite into the material and then get stuck, and you just turn it into a new orientation where the nail hasn't left its grooves. It really takes some good hammer strikes with a punch to get this reinserted and reseated. And then after that, the seal here is perfectly seated. It is actually spring loaded, so when you close the filler cap, it asserts a certain amount of pressure on this gasket. This is cork. I can see, even though it has only been on here for a few months, there's an indentation from the spring pressure, and that's what you need to have it not spill any fuel when you're doing the twisties, right? So my tank is relatively full. I'm already getting dizzy here, but anyways, it seals on here perfectly. I have never had any spills. There is a little vent hole in here. You gotta make sure this is open, or else you might run into the situation where fuel drains out of your tank into your carbs, the engine uses it up, and then the fluid that leaves the tank needs to be replaced by air. If this is clogged, you might get a little bit of some low pressure going, and then your fuel flow to your carbs will slow down, and then you might run into some other issues so that your bike doesn't want to run properly. So venting is needs to be properly done, so make sure the vent hole is okay. So this is, not a beauty, but it does the job. And I have the original pin here. Back here is also a spring that kind of it doesn't really help you close it, but once it's closed, it wants to stay in this position, and then once you flip it up, it wants to stay in this position, so it's not just flopping around. So this is how it's designed. And then here in the front, you just have this hook latch, which is also spring loaded. It has a really good grip on this edge of the tank here, so it doesn't come open ever. You really have to push on it pretty hard to open it up. So now let's look at the aftermarket one. After I turn my phone off. Every time I start filming, my phone just doesn't stop making noises. So comparing those two, they are pretty similar in design. The shape, the exterior shape of this Indian made version here is a little different. The latch is a little narrower. It does have a spring back here. They use a different pin. They just use a normal split pin. So it looks like it could work. The gasket is very similar in shape. It's also spring loaded, even though the spring is much softer, and it uses a little screw in the middle and not a rivet. But so let's put this on here. Split pin. All right, Heiko, do it without scratching up your tank. How about that? And I'm not going to punch it in all the way just so that it's seated. Huh? Okay, so we have it installed. It's much floppier, so the BMW lid doesn't do this. It actually has a kind of secured location here and a secured position here. That's how the back end of the tank mount here is formed. So pretty much this Indian spring thing doesn't do anything. Only the last, I don't know, couple millimeters you feel that there's some spring tension. And then when you close the cap, it locks in place. But I've noticed that, yeah, let me grab you real quick. So I've noticed that, first of all, the whole cap is lifted up in the front a little too high. It's not parallel to the tank surface, whereas the BMW one is really nicely parallel. Then the latch here in the front, it barely grabs onto it. It does, but not really great. It's really just the front tip of this latch. It looks like the gasket sits on it pretty nicely. And I told you about the spring pressure here. I can feel that I'm pushing against the gasket. There is some tension on it. But so now here is the final result of this installation. I tried it. I was pretty, yeah, you know, for $8 compared to a replacement from some BMW place for 80 or 90 bucks of this thing here. I was like, yeah, for $8 you can try that. I wish the hook part would be pulling it down a little more. But yeah, so what I ended up noticing is as soon as I pushed my bike out of the garage, fuel was spilling all over my tank. So whatever the spring tension here on this gasket is, combining that with the holding position of this whole latch mechanism and the fact that the cap points up a little bit, just doesn't exert enough pressure on the gasket to actually seal it on the tank. And my tank is not perfect up here. I mean, this is pretty rough. This is on a painted surface. Probably if I would clean this up, maybe we would have better luck, but this is a rubber gasket that even has a little bit of a lip here on the outside. It just doesn't seal. So for $8 you get a gas cap that looks okay. The chrome is not super shiny. It's kind of like already scratched up. And I don't know if they tried to hand polish this, but it doesn't have this typical chrome shine that you want. But yeah, it leaks. There you have it. Replacing your $90 fuel tank filler cap on your BMW Airhead for $8 from India is unfortunately not going to cut it. Not so fast, Heiko. What if we use an old gasket that I still have lying around that used to work here just fine until I decided to put a new one on there? If we try to install this on this Indian cap, maybe manipulate the spring a little bit so it has more tension on the on the edge of the tank here on this. This is literally a cam. Alright guys, now I'm officially taking it way too far. Took it off one more time. Take the old gasket off. This is a BMW style quart gasket. Little screw. And here's the spring. And then here I have another spring, and this is out of a really old and ugly cap. I just drilled out the rivet. I couldn't pull it out. Sometimes they come out. In this case it didn't. This spring is much stiffer than this one here. So this will give us a little bit more spring tension, and it actually fits in here. And now, since we have gone so far, we might as well put a drop of Loctite on the little screw and make sure it doesn't come out and fall into the tank, which, you know, would be just an inconvenience. Okay, drop of blue. Alright, so here is the absolute final product. Indian gas cap with the original, I had a spare, rusty spare running around, pin with a knurled end. It's a little long for this cap. In a BMW cap it would be flush on both sides, more or less. So knurled here on the side. After I wire brushed this pin a little bit, it went in just like in the original, and the knurling is interfering with material over here, so it holds it in place. I pushed it in so that both ends stick out the same amount. I manipulated or reshaped some of the material here on the catch inside so that the catch can grab hold of this lip a little better. And there is also a spring in there that I put a little bit of some silicone grease on, so it's freely moving and nicely springy. And then out of a really old ratty looking gas cap, I took the original spring out, and I had a used gasket lying around. So now we have a used BMW gasket, a used spring under here, which gives this thing way more spring tension. So now it goes down. Here I can feel that there is a little bit resistance from the spring back here, so it doesn't completely fall down, so that's kind of nice. And then you really have to push pretty hard to close it. So this will not leak. I'm pretty sure that this will work just like the BMW cap, even though it's still not 100% flush or parallel to the top of the tank, but the catch is catching all the way. It's really grabbing it with full length of this little hook, and yeah, this will not leak. So this is a $8 plus 1 hour of labor and usage of some old parts that I had lying around, and I'm going to ride it a little bit. Of course, I still have my trusty, usable, little worn and aged patina with a new gasket in it, which I can always put back in. But for now, this is going to stay on there. Alrighty guys, this is really now the last time that I show you this cap.